Hey, y'all, welcome to Geek Freaks. I am Frank. Today I'm joined by Jonathan.
Well, hello.
And we have Squeaks.
Squeaks.
That's for the visual listener there.
Extra bonuses for watching us.
Yeah. We have a lot to talk about today. Well, actually, let's be honest, it's a light day. But we have some news about Carrie and Foggy and Daredevil Season 2. There's a Monopoly movie in the works. Vikings is coming back. We're also going to be discussing the best and worst adaptations and are they getting better or worse over time. We'll also have an interview with Rob and Analese from Nerd Best Friends, so make sure you guys tune in for that. Let's go ahead and get started with our question of the week, though. What movie, show, or game that you wish you could experience for the first time again? Squeaks, let's start with you, man.
Oh, man. Okay. So first game, it'd have to be, and always will be, like one of my best favorites, is Kingdom Hearts. And I still have memories of buying that shit when layaway was a thing, right? And like, I need this game and you're paying it off. But also like memories of like, yelling at my parents to come see, like, look, like I'm playing with Winnie the Pooh or whatever character that pops up on the screen, whatever world. And those are some of the, like, I don't know, just memories that'll never leave your head. One of those core memories, right? So Kingdom Hearts is something that I wish I would experience for the first time again.
I remember when that was first coming out, we were camping at Dillon Beach, and that was back when we had like Game Informers and stuff like that. So we got information.
Yeah.
And there was this news that there's a new Final Fantasy, but it was going to have Disney characters in it. And it was at a buzz before the game came out. And yeah, that was like a lot of hype behind that. It was one of the first games I remember, a lot of hype before it even came out.
Yeah, for sure. So that definitely be mine. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, John?
Yeah, I'm thinking Halo probably. And I say that and I bite my own tongue in the same word because I know there's a new Halo Infinite out and I haven't played it. But I remember back in the day when we had the time and we lived together and so that you and me would play through all the Halos together. And it was just such a good game. Like it was well made of its time, especially it stood out above everything else.
Yeah, music. So good.
Yeah. But aside from games, I would love to be able to rewatch for the first time both Avatar: The Last Airbender, because that was just such good writing. I mean, we were young watching this animated show that seemed like it's for kids, but the writing was for adults for sure. And then Heroes. Remember Heroes?
Oh my God, yes.
From, I don't even remember. I think it was on
NBC. Yeah.
Yeah. It was so good at the time. And they tried to do a reboot and it just wasn't as good. And I'm sure if you rewatch it now, it seemed cheesy and cheap. But back then when we didn't have MCU and things like that, it was, groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And
it is in the development of another reboot. So we could be
cool. Okay.
Yeah. For me, no surprise here, World of Warcraft, that idea of a game that's that big, that's always connected, that's always live, that community, to just get lost in the Barrens or, wherever, that is, as much as you play it now, we've been playing it for over 20 years or 20 years at this point. And it just can't capture that like first time. And I even when somebody new comes to the game, like experiencing it through them is the best. So that would be one game I would wish I could experience one more time. Like it was the game you bought a PC for, a gaming PC for. And yeah, that was good days, guys. Let's go ahead and get into our news. So first off, we're going to be talking about Daredevil Season 2. So spoiler warning for that if you guys haven't seen the first episode of Born Again. But we just heard from the show co-creator or showrunner that Karen and Foggy will be returning for Season 2. So when you're watching that first episode, there are definitely some reshoots. And that's because Kevin Feige, Bob Iger came in and said like, no, guys, we need to clean up how we do Disney shows or Marvel shows. They're not working well. And so Agatha was the first one to have a showrunner, a show Bible, things like that. And one of the things they changed was like Karen and Foggy weren't in the episode. And he's like, that's crazy. I mean, we need to have Karen. They are Daredevil. They're his corner. They're his soul and morality. So they brought him in and you could feel it. But if you guys know, I'm kind of talking a little bit. So the spoilers, people will move away. Foggy dies in the first episode in the first 15 minutes. So the question is, how do you bring him back? We see this all the time in comic books. People being brought back from the dead. Do you think it'll be a psychological thing, or do you think that we're gonna get some sort of like Lazarus pit? What do you guys think?
Well, quick question then: how does he die? Because that changes a lot how we can bring him back.
So
he just shot in the face.
Jonathan and Squeaks haven't seen it yet. He is shot in the chest by Bullseye.
Okay. So, I mean, that in itself, he could be in the hospital and recover from, right?
In the show, because it happens in the first 15 minutes, we then jump 1 year ahead, and he has been dead for a year. So Daredevil and Karen both think he's dead. Everybody thinks he's dead, and both of them move on with their lives because of it.
I almost
go
ahead. Yeah,
like we saw the hand and the ninjas and stuff like how they have that resurrection ability. They could write it that way, but then his character is always going to be one who was resurrected from the dead, and that would be, a supernatural twist to his character who is very, walking the straight and narrow and just a normal guy in this superhero world. So I don't think they would do something like that. I think it would be more likely that he was taken by somebody else, kept alive, one of these secret organizations, Kingpin or somebody, and, kept alive and healed, and to be either used as leverage or blackmail against Daredevil later on, or maybe to get information out of him or something like that. But I hope in the end, his character doesn't actually change dramatically, maybe grows, finding new purpose or something like that, but not to be, he's an undead lawyer and changes,
he's a zombie lawyer.
Think of that. Think of that having to fight against like She-Hulk in a court.
Your Honor, brains.
Man, that's actually a super good idea, John. But I was thinking more like I don't really care about this character, so I feel like maybe it'd just be like flashback points or like something in his mind that's telling him, kind of trying to help him steer in the right way, because then we'll get some like relationship bonding between them even like in the afterlife, and kind of help Daredevil make certain decisions. But that, like, to bring him back or keep him alive or do whatever, I just think I don't think he's like, he might be strong in this series, but he's not really like strong in the Marvel universe, right? To me, there are times where like She-Hulk, he pops up in comics with the She-Hulk. But even at that, he's kind of just like that character to joke around about. If I remember right. I think like She-Hulk sleeping with like another dude and they're in the same apartment together, so he just hears it all night. But I don't know. Do we care? Like, Frank, I know you're like watching this and keeping up on it. Do you care?
Yeah, I would say the key with Foggy and with Karen is that they keep Matt Murdock still Matt without falling too deep into like I am Daredevil, like the Batman problem, right? Where Bruce Wayne is all but forgotten for Batman. The thing that keeps Matt still grounded is his friends. And with Karen out of the picture, because she also moves to San Francisco after this event, and she's gone, so he's by himself, and he does seem to be losing himself a lot. Not necessarily
go full on Punisher if he doesn't have that balance in his life, right?
But that's the problem with Daredevil is you don't want him to go full Punisher. You have a Punisher for that. You want him to still be like lawyer first, Daredevil second.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the problem with me is I do want there to be something that keeps him grounded. And what I would like for them to try to do, if they're going to so adamant about bringing Foggy back, is to do the Joker Batman thing that we see from the Arkham games. Joker dies in one of the Batman games.
Yeah, so see like in his head,
he's still there in the future games, but he's basically like the devil on Batman's shoulder the whole time, kind of whispering in his ear, suggesting things, his morality check. And that would be very cool to me to see Foggy kind of like sitting next to him while he's sitting there, fighting somebody, or he's about to punch somebody, might be too hard. And Foggy's like, that's not what you would do, Matt. I think that would be kind of a fun little duality there of two different characters.
Do we want to see him like Joker? Oh, sorry. Do we want to see him like Joker where he's all messed up looking like Joker was? I would like to see him always show up with like a chest in it or like a bullet in his chest. And always
a little bit of blood on his shirt. That'd be cool.
Yeah. A little too dark.
I think that would teach like an interesting lesson or something like that to everybody also, to the audience, that, somebody who passes isn't truly gone if you remember them kind of thing. Like
that's
that would,
a good idea. Yeah.
People can live on forever as long as we learn from the things they taught us and stuff like that. So I think that's a little too deep for the type of show we're watching.
Yeah, that is a little too deep for this show. Okay, John.
I doubt they would go with that route, but that'd be kind of cool.
It's not too deep for Daredevil though, because his whole thing is that was raised in the church. His mom's a nun. Yeah. It's not too deep for the character, but maybe for Disney Plus.
I'm trying to get caught up because I watched all of season 1 and then I watched a little bit of season 2 back when they first aired and then stopped. So I finished season 2 or in the beginning of season 3. So right now he's like struggling with his faith and trying to, regain his strength and all that stuff. So it's really good arc that he's in the middle of.
Season 3 is my favorite one. So
yeah,
that's when you get Bullseye too, is in season 3. Yeah. So he's going to be a problem. Let's go ahead and move forward. We have a Monopoly movie. And at first I'm like, that sounds stupid, but it's being written by the guys who did that Dungeons and Dragons movie.
That was my butt too.
Yeah. What do you think, Squeaks, about this?
Yeah, I mean, okay. So I'm kind of looking forward to potentially seeing it for the fact that it was done by the Dungeons and Dragons makers. And then I'm kind of like picturing it too, like it'd be like this big, try to think of like this big city, right? Of just like glamour, big buildings and stuff. Like what kind of the things that you want to strive for, like buying property on Park Place or something like at the end, right?
Yeah, boardwalk.
But then it'd be nice to see those cities where like, yeah, this is the ghetto. We don't really care about these ones, but people still own the real estate. And it'd be it'd be funny to see like this maybe like this group of guys that consistently like try to like buy up property, right? So it'd be funny like to see like those kinds of wars or whatever. And I can see a lot of humor with this thing, but I think at the end, obviously, like the lesson learned, I would feel like if I was like pitching this movie too, is like, okay, what happens when someone does buy it all? And then what? Yeah. Like, what do you have? You probably like ruin relationships or whatever when you do own everything. But something, a twist that I would really like to see though, is something that the Lego movie did. That the whole time you're watching this movie, but at the end of it, realize that there's people that are playing with these Legos.
Yes.
So I would like to see during the movie, if there was like this, you could say godlike type character that's changing things around or events that are happening that they don't know why. And it's because there's someone orchestrating the whole board game.
Mm-hmm. If you do that, then at some point, whoever's the banker has to be stealing from the bank. That'd be great. Yeah. Or like somebody's cheating in the game and we find out later on that's like, oh, that's because they were hiding that they had this card or something like that.
That's our brother Miguel.
Yeah. So to me, I was thinking like this has to have Jack Black in it or somebody like him. It's got to be funny. It's got to be comedy. Right away, I'm thinking of the Jumanji, like how good those were.
Those are perfect.
But I'm thinking in the world of the Cat in the Hat movie with Mike Myers. Remember how like whimsical that world design was?
Forgotten Gem, dude, so good.
So good. And I saw a review online saying it wasn't good. And I'm like, what? No, it was amazing. Crazy. Like him when he's doing the whole chef scene and stuff. Anyway.
It was too much adult humor. I think that's why I got a lot of bad rap. But I thought it was hilarious. I love that movie.
Oh my god, yeah.
So I'd like to see Jack Black as some rich guy in the city or whatever, and he's going around trying to buy up all the buildings in town. And then there's two young kids who realize like, well, no, if you guys buy everything, and he's jacking up rent and stuff like that, so people can't afford anything. And so two young kids realize like, well, if he buys up everything, he's going to own it all, and we won't have anywhere to live and blah, blah, blah. So two young kids have to like work together to try to overthrow this guy that's trying to make a monopoly in their small town or city.
See, that's a good idea to have like someone that's trying to buy it all, and then the gets the whatever. But I kind of want to see something a little different. Like I want to see like some trade war type stuff to like Wolf on Wall Street, Leonardo being there fighting with other companies.
Yeah, but especially with what you're mentioning beforehand, like we see like this big battle. Like if it's a serious thing, with these writers, I think it'll be a joke. But with it being a serious thing, like if it is this big battle amongst like 4 different kings of New York or whatever, and then at the end you zoom out and you see it's like 4 kids and one of them's a punk, and so you're like, oh yeah, all these asshole attitudes is actually just these 4 kids sitting around a table. That'd be kind of a fun little thing. Like, oh, it's all childish. The funny thing is the first original creator of Monopoly made the game to teach people that Monopoly is bad and capitalism is bad, but then was kind of upset by it. Her game was bought and sold, blah, 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 by, I think it was Mattel or something like that. And it was celebrating capitalism and monopolies and stuff like that. She's always hated that. And so it's funny that when we're talking about this movie, we're all coming to the same consensus that at the end, there's a lesson to be learned. The lesson that she wanted in the first place is that it's not great to own everything. But I mean, with John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein, the 2 writers on this, I do feel like it will be a comedy, and maybe there is a thing where we kind of do like, a satire on capitalism, but also like just these guys constantly making all their money and losing it all because like you keep going around to the poor area every time you go past go. There's going to be a part where they go to jail and somebody's going to have a card to get out. Stuff like that. Maybe they can make a little bit of jokes about that, community chest or whatever. Yeah,
I think it's a little tough, right? Because you want to have this lesson, but then you also made this game where like that's the point you want to win, right? So you're making me do it.
Right.
But it'd be funny to kind of see like what you said, like go past these poor areas, whatever. But imagine like these like big wigs, right, are just trying to get these like really nice properties, but somehow they keep landing, right, whatever they do to make it on these poor properties. So all these like people with the small properties are getting rich because they keep landing on them. I think that'd be funny. Then you just be like, fuck Boulevard or whatever it's called,
Yeah. One dude's always in the railroads. It's all on the writers because again, when I heard Monopoly movie, I'm like, why are we doing this? It reminds me of that. Well, you know what? Honestly, I'm saying this, but that Battlefield movie, what was it called? Battleship movie. When that thing was announced, I thought it was stupid. It's not the worst movie. It's actually kind of good.
Bad, yeah. It's just the premise when you think of like you're grasping at straws to take a board game that has no depth to it, and you're making all of the story, all of the depth out of almost nothing. You're taking a picture and writing a whole book about it, and it's like, that's kind of a lot just to get the value that it provides from being recognizable.
Yeah.
But if you can make a good movie out of it, then do it. It's still a recognizable name.
Yeah, it's almost like the Barbie movie, right? Like the Barbies doesn't have like they have like different jobs and stuff like that, but they're not like a super like story based established concept already like D&D was, right? And I thought that movie's great. I love the Barbie movie. Cracks me up.
One thing that's kind of disheartening is the fact that these guys aren't making more Dungeons and Dragons movies. Like that thing to me was great.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Bring it back. Make another one. All right, moving forward, Michael Hurst, he's the creator of the Vikings series and its Viking spinoff. He's making a new series, this time for Amazon, called Blood Axe. So just a little story behind Blood Axe. Eric Blood Axe and his wife, Gunhild, will also be in the show. He was ruthless both in politics and in combat. His father was the king of Norway. Eventually, what happens is Blood Axe takes over Norway and then takes over Northumbria. So he's like this conquering, he's one of the first big kings. Did you guys have a chance to watch the Viking series? And what are we needing? Why do we need more of these, basically?
Oh, my God. Yes, I watched it all. And I think I just crazy binge watched it during like one of my firstborn or something like that and on leave or whatever. But it's got this like, it's hints of Game of Thrones without the intense like magical side. Like there are some stuff like, I don't know what you call it. There's some spiritual type stuff that goes on, but it's really grounded also. And it just, I don't know. It's just the characters were perfect to me. I had a blast with it. It was definitely like after the first season, you could tell like the budget went up, right? The first season was horrible, like fighting, like I'm just seeing a bunch of people LARPing and shit. But then next thing you know, now we're doing like crazy, like ripping bodies apart and stuff like that. Like really gory. It gets gorier and stuff like that.
One of the seasons where they go attack France, you're like, this is movie budget. This is crazy expensive.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. It was just good storylines with issues that were happening of like who's helming what and who's taking charge when others are gone. And I don't know. It was just that, again, it's Game of Thrones to me without the crazy, not as magic, I guess.
And the politics aren't as intense either, too. Like you're right about the Game of Thrones thing, but it was also kind of like just scaled back a little bit. So it's a little bit more enjoyable to watch and less like you have to focus on absolutely every little detail because it was just like, oh yeah, I know that guy with the axe. He's going to go kill that guy with the axe. And like, it was nice like that, in that way.
Yeah.
And also the thing too, is that was based off of a legend amongst the Norse about Ragnar Lothbrok, who was kind of like everybody's dad. This character, like literally there's a statue of him in Norway. So like this is actually a real person. And when we get the spinoff or like later in the seasons for Vikings, that character, his son, is a real character. So it's interesting to see them go into like the book, basically. Like these are real characters. So
this is more their history than fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
What is it that you guys want to see out of this that we might not have seen before? Like for me, I would like to see other cultures and their interactions. Like we got a little bit with like France and whatnot, but with Northumbria and things like that. Like I would like to see other nations at this time kind of come into conflict with the Vikings and how they handled them because they were different than their neighbors in a lot of ways. And also let's show the Vikings more extensively. Like they were farmers first, raiders second, but every time we show them on screen, they're raiding. So it would be kind of, if you guys played Valhalla, it's a great interpretation of them. Like most of what they're doing is just trying to establish colonies and survive in a land that has actual fruitful, whatever, like actual land. But instead you're like, yo, axe all the time in these movies. It'd be cool to see some more of that.
So is this post first Vikings? So at the end of the Vikings series, I remember they were kind of being drifted away and like actual history, right? Like adopting like Catholicism and all that stuff. So it's like the Vikings kind of slowly went away. I'm assuming this is beforehand. Is that correct?
Because this is a long span and a lot of different areas that are Vikings, technically. Yeah. And so, this would be, I think this is beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe that continued conflict of like the people going away, essentially, maybe they feel like their culture is being ridden of, because of maybe conflicts with other cultures and stuff like that, like we see in the last of the seasons. Maybe something like that, more of that conflict. I don't know. Yeah.
I like that idea because like in The Last Kingdom, which is a very good series and they're actually making a movie for it right now. If you guys haven't watched that, I absolutely recommend it, maybe even more than Vikings. And in that one, specifically, they're taking over England. And there are certain tribes of the Vikings that have joined the English side and are now kind of like English boys. They're like, oh, we're still dating, and they're like, no, you're not. You're going to church now. You're not worshiping the trees like we do or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it'd be neat to actually see crossover, like deals being made, like Vikings making deals with like Englishmen or whatnot, and then kind of betraying their own tribe. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Yeah.
I like, and from like Game of Thrones, I like the, elevated fantasy side of it, dragons and magic and whatnot. And I know this isn't going to have that to it because it's just a totally different vibe. But I think more depth to the story, like you're saying, like doesn't have much of the politics and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be so strategic and super complicated, but like you're saying, like kind of elaborate on the culture more and like what does it look like when they go back home and they're not in war? Nice. What do their bakers, look like? They have to eat. There's a butcher somewhere. Like they're not all just, the warriors. Like Star Trek, we see the Klingons. It's like, well, somebody makes the Klingon armor. Somebody, builds their ships. Where's the engineers? Where's the doctor? We only see warriors. So it'd be cool to see kind of the depth in their culture that you don't get from the other shows.
Yeah.
That is kind of a blind spot in Star Trek itself, too, is the fact that we don't see a lot of people who are not in Federation. And I remember very clearly the one episode of Voyager I could think of where Harry Kim has a what if episode of what if he didn't go on Voyager. And it's like, there's this coffee shop he goes to. Like, there's coffee shops in Starfleet. There's like all kinds of things. It's like, oh, I didn't even think about how people are like, oh, that guy's an artist. You're not on a ship somewhere fighting Klingons or whatever, or alongside Klingons at that point. So, yeah, that would be kind of cool to kind of expand that world, both in Star Trek, now I'm thinking about it, and here too. Yeah. And the last thing too is like, I think Vikings was originally made for the History Channel. The second one was made for Netflix. This is the first time that Amazon's taking it, and Amazon has been leaning hard into fantasy with the Rings of Power and Wheel of Time. So they kind of are getting pretty good at making those fight scenes and making them look good. Let's move forward. We're going to be going into our discussion segment for this one. And our discussion this week is the best and worst adaptations. And when does Hollywood get it right or wrong? So first off for this one, we're going to be going over some of the good adaptations we have, some of the bad adaptations we have, because it seems like it's something that I can't tell you how many times I've told people like, oh, that's based off a comic book, or that's based off a video game. And it's getting better and better in my opinion. What do you guys think makes a good adaptation? When it sticks strictly to the source material or when they try to reinvent it? What do you think, Jonathan?
I think it has to be reinvented. I think sticking to the source material, you get the same thing in a different medium, which doesn't always translate well. If you take a comic book and you're making it, shot for shot in a live action, series, it just doesn't play the same. It wasn't made for that, that medium. But I think also it's largely based on fan expectations from the source material, because if you make something that is such a cult classic, like I'm going to say this thing and it's going to sound like a sin. If they were to remake Back to the Future right now.
What a sin.
Exactly. People would hate it because everybody loves it so much that to remake it, you're going to inevitably butcher it in some way. Right. So like if you take, something that is so dear to people and do your best with it, it's still not going to meet their expectations. So the trick to me, and I'm nobody in the business, but to find something that is good, but not thoroughly like exploited or not, saturated in the market. For example, the first Iron Man movie was so good because Iron Man was a comic book, but it wasn't like everybody's talking about it all the time right now. It wasn't a real big hit. It was good. It was just one of them. But then, when you do Superman, there's a little more judgment around that because he's a little more well known. So yeah, I think it's getting a source material that is adaptable more than whether you adapt it or not. I think you have to adapt it, but you have to get one that's easily adaptable without offending everybody or making people go crazy.
Yeah. I remember specifically with Iron Man being in a comic book shop after the movie released and thinking like, this is like a new era of what movies should look like. And there was some nerd in there who was all like, yeah, but this isn't what Iron Man looks like in the comics. I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I have never even opened an Iron Man comic book. And this guy's worried about it not being accurate. Who the hell knows who Iron Man is?
Exactly.
But now everybody does,
You're like, the comic book had it wrong, bud.
That's like Guardians of the Galaxy. Everybody loves Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I would love to beat the person who had a Guardians of the Galaxy comic book before the movies came out. I don't know anybody.
Shoot, I'll throw my hat into this. So I think a good adaptation, obviously, and we've seen it like really recent, and I'll name it shortly after, is that they are pulling like the beloved parts of what we love about like that source material, but like doing their own thing with it. It doesn't have to be the same story, because then we're just going to critique it like crazy. A movie I'm kind of like referencing right now is the Sonic movies and how successful they have been. So the Sonic, the characters themselves, like to the T, right? They're perfect, and like their origin part of it also. But then you got someone like Funny that can pull off the Dr. Eggman, Jim Carrey, and it doesn't have to be the typical. Yeah, they wanted the chaos gems, but it doesn't have to go the same route like we usually see in a movie. So like, I mean, obviously they did that right, and now we got three now, and I'm about to lean on 4 now with the ending of 3 that explains like what we're going to expect from number 4.
Yeah.
But then you have, and I hate to say it because when I was little, I used to watch this quite often, the old Super Mario movie, right? Super Mario Bros.
I loved that movie.
I loved it,
At
but
the
again,
time I did. For sure.
Yeah, but you got like kind of like a confusing plot. It could be at some points, and then you have like what do you call it? Oh my god,
like a Peach.
Oh my gosh, no, character miscasting. Very different than what it really originally is. But again, it's a movie that I kind of liked when I was little. But if we were to see it again, we were like, "What the fuck is this?" And then compared to that masterpiece, that the animated movie that came out, then it's like, okay, that was perfect to me with Bowser. Okay, Bowser always steals Peach, right? Like that's the thing. But did we ever get like a love life story with him? So it's like, again, you're taking like the best parts of what we love and bringing it over, and then adding something new to it. Where like now you got the Bowser song singing a Peach like a hit when that came out, right? Yeah. So yeah, you got to throw a twist to it, but still like pull the things that are beloved.
I think that movie is a direct like depiction of 90s movies too, though. It was the style back then. It's that with the, a story from a very underdeveloped game at the time. Now there's so much more Mario content. It's been shaped a lot more. So the new one is definitely based on newer Mario games. And like, it's been very thoroughly adapted. Now, if we look at it from today, it looks kind of like a steampunk movie. So if you were to try to remake it as Mario, a steampunk type movie, that would fit a lot better. You could remake that version of it. But like I was saying, like there's so much more Mario now that that was just based on like the NES Mario, I think, or maybe the N64. But
3 was on the horizon. Like it was in development. I think that came out in 91. So it was 93. But that's a really good example of them just kind of ditching a lot of what they do know about Mario. Like we know what Toad looks like. He doesn't look like that. We know what, and like Bowser's not a dinosaur, but they made him a dinosaur.
Yeah, right.
So there was all kinds of things they took liberties with that I think turned away most fans. What's with this goo in the city? Why are we in this city? Stuff like that were just totally. Now, does it stand alone as a fun romp outside of that? Like I just watched that movie again a couple years ago for the Sloop podcast, and revisiting it is like, this is nearly unwatchable. Actually, this is pretty bad. Through the lens of being a kid, it was like, oh, I don't have any other Mario content. I need this. But as an adult, you're watching, you're like, this is, I mean, even the acting's bad in this thing. And it had John Leguizamo, who I think is amazing now. But yeah, it is pretty awful. I want to throw my hat on like what makes a good adaptation is you take what is like the heart of the reason we like it.
Yeah.
So, The Last of Us, it's that survival and leaning on a father and daughter relationship. Let's go back to the D&D. We were talking about D&D. It's the idea that you live in a fantasy world, but there's like this little wild, crazy stories in a band, like a little party, like weird things happen, fun things happen in a little party. If you could pull that out, you could almost change everything around it. And so for that Dungeons and Dragons movie, where we're watching these two that right on that one guy, remember, like his name was like Jonathan, but not Jonathan. They think he's going to be talking about them, and he's like writing. He's an Erico. They write him outside the window, and it's like, we're going to pardon you. It's like such a classic thing. And as a DM, there's so many times where I'm like, guys, if you guys waited for like 2 seconds, you would have heard you're fine. But instead, Daniel's crashing through a window because he thinks it's going to look cool, and he rolled good on a dice. That pulled at the heart of what makes Dungeons and Dragons good, and then like wrapped everything else around it. So if you can nail that, you're good. Like Game of Thrones, if you can nail the political drama, that's really good in the books. There it is. So many times they forget that, like the Avatar movie that came out in like 2010. First off, you changed Aang's name. There was absolutely no reason for that. And then it was like, you guys don't have any of the whimsy or the heart that's in this thing that makes us love it. Instead, you're just showing things bending. It made no sense.
Yeah.
Do you think there's too much? So you brought up Last of Us. Do you think there's too much of a copy and paste? Because I feel like a lot. Okay, so I'm going to compare the two. So Last of Us just really felt like the video game adaptation, and I feel like there was too much that was really added. But you had Wicked, which was pulled from obviously the play, But the movie brought like, okay, now we have more dialogue between the characters. We can kind of fall in love with the characters a little bit more.
Yeah.
They're building more of a relationship because they're conversating instead of just like singing songs and whatnot. Do you feel like there's too much, like they need to break that a little bit? You think Last of Us should maybe add a little something to it, or are fans just going to be pissed off and upset about it?
When I think about that, I think about Lion King a lot. When they did the live action Lion King movie, the first one, our complaint was that it was too much like the story was too much like the regular movie.
Right,
but it's
shot for shot. Yeah.
Yeah, but if it wasn't, we'd complain about that too.
Exactly.
And so I think for The Last of Us, there's a lot of people who don't know about that game at all, and they are being woken up to this amazing story.
Yeah. Okay.
But for Wicked, there were a lot of things that by the original medium, being a play, being a musical, that they probably didn't have the ability to show a lot of dialogue. And what is it that I said beforehand? It pulls at the heart. What is that relationship between the rich girl or like the famous popular girl, whatever, and then the outcast being pulled out and put out on screen. There we go. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of like dichotomy, the Mean Girls aspect of it, that being amplified, I think is a good, that movie is, God damn it. It's really, I'm actually looking forward to Wicked Part 2.
If you need to know, I know. I just saw the play. So
did you really?
I can tell you all the spoilers.
So let's go ahead and look at a couple of successful adaptations, and then we're going to look at some of that are bad. I'll start us off on a really great one. I think the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You just can't do better at that. I think it's as faithful as you possibly can be. There are things where I think an adaptation knows it like that won't translate well. So like Tom Bombadil, a lot of people complain like, why is Tom Bombadil not in this? I don't think he would have done well in this movie. First off, he breaks up the story pretty wildly, and he's kind of a whimsical floating like a Q character from Star Trek. So he wouldn't fit well with this like large saga we're setting up. In the books, you have time to breathe with that. But in the movie you did. And I think overall, perfect adaptation, probably the best one I could think of. You guys have any good ones?
It's so good that you assume like the Lord of the Rings was a movie first, you know?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yeah.
Man, no, I said, I thought mine already. Like Sonic was perfect to me.
Yeah, long list.
Wicked was great.
So
yeah.
I'm surprised you're not mentioning Harry Potter.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I was waiting for that one, yeah. Specifically, I think The Prisoner of Azkaban, I think, is the best one, the best version.
Yeah. The things that they took away from the books and the movies that were like kind of like, I don't care, right? I think I said it before. In the first one, there was like a specific ghost. They cast the ghost. They did all the work. The actor was upset that he wasn't in the movie. But then when you read it like from the book into the movie, like, I can see him gone. So maybe it was the right decision. There's a second Quidditch game in the book. Felt extremely rushed. Maybe we didn't need it, so they didn't do it. And I felt like, the things that they took away from the book to the movie were perfect. And it's just smart decisions that you don't have to pull everything, you know?
Mm-hmm. With Prisoner of Azkaban, they changed how the reveal happens, right? With the mouse or with the rat being whatever his name is.
Yeah. What was it though? Do you remember?
They changed. I think they changed the reveal to where it happened beforehand, but you weren't like, it wasn't Harry being surprised in that moment. And so it was like, well, they're making it more cinematic in the movie to where it's like a surprise for both us and Harry at the same time. I think that was a good move. Like kind of just that you needed that. And then the way the time turner situation worked, I thought was shot perfectly. That's my favorite of the Harry Potter movies.
Yeah. And, It's almost like the stuff that they took away were right decisions, you know?
Yeah. I'll give you another really good one for me. Oh, sorry. You got one, John?
No, good. No, okay. Game of Thrones, of course, is,
Yep.
Everything Game of Thrones has been good so far. No complaints. But like, I remember you reading the books too, and you would tell me chapter by chapter kind of what was going on in the story and stuff. And then us watching it together too. It's like, I know there's a lot that, probably didn't make it on screen. But yeah, it takes that kind of changing things to fit better. Like, I mean, they did cut out some really good stuff, but it's like Catelyn being beheaded and then resurrected with Lady Stoneheart and a big cut on her neck and stuff. It's like, that looks really cool. And visually that would be great for us. And it's such a great, like, elevates the story. It puts so much more investment in that character. But for the mainstream audience that's just tiptoeing into this whole fantasy world, that might be a little bit past their limit, might be pushing past the edge. So I think that's why they had to dial back. They had to take the tops off of some of the story that was a little too out there, rein it in a little bit so that the average audience member could, enjoy it as well and make it a little more mainstream.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of like Lady Stoneheart, literally a zombie that has to hold her neck so she could speak. And I remember so well, we were wondering if they're going to bring her in. The actress, on a whim, posted on her Instagram like a picture of rocks shaped into a heart. Just because she's like, oh, look, it's heart-shaped rocks, whatever. She thought it was cute. Holy cow, you don't know what kind of nerds. The amount we're subtly discussing, like, there's 14 hearts, or there's 14 rocks. That means that there's going to be these people that are going to be here. And then like, oh, you messed up.
And in February of 19, whatever, she sent a picture of her, like, holding her neck. Like, oh, my God, that must have been her giving us a hint.
No, she just likes to be choked. Fuck.
Rickon, who I think... yeah, right. Rickon in the books, wild is that he's actually on the island of Skagos. It's an island with cannibals that ride on unicorns, and it's like you can't show that on TV. That's so silly.
A little too much.
Yeah. But there are a lot, like White Harbor, I think is so freaking cool in the books, but it's just something that you didn't have time for in the show. That's like this, like, oh, what about the Lannisters of the North? Because like, where's the North's money? They have their own version of the Lannisters. They're from White Harbor's, the Marleys, I think it's called. And they'll work with the Lannisters just to screw them over and funnel money to the Starks. Like, they're a really cool family. And I really wish they showed them more. Like, they have like this one place that like literally they kind of keep as a prestige area where the king of the North came one time to like swear his fealty to them. And they look at the Starks as like brothers. And it's such a cool story. And they are the rich family of the area. So, but that's something you don't have time in the show.
Who was the Ironborn, I think prince or king, who I think is Varian or something like that, who would wear a full suit of armor and would jump from ship to ship and fight in armor. But, you know, if he falls between the ships, he's going to drown. I was like, damn, that's such a cool character too.
What I love too is his brother, the one that we do get in the show, the whole subplot between the two of them is that he hates him so much because he stole his wife. And it's specifically told in the books, he took his wife because he has a bigger dick than him. That's the whole thing, is that he's like this fierce warrior that jumps from ship to ship and blah, 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 blah. But man, I'm not packing a lot of heat.
Brother, I understand.
The one more I want to add to this is the Dark Knight trilogy, because they were like, hey, we've done Batman to hell. How are we going to change it up? First off, you get Christopher Nolan. You get a good director first. And they made this kind of believable world. Even when Bane's blowing up the stadium, you're kind of like, I mean, yeah, if you're Bane, that makes sense. If Bane being in this world kind of makes sense. How do you make Joker seem so believable? Yeah, this Joker seems somewhat believable. And I think that they took an adaptation from the comics. Like, they pulled obviously from a lot of the earlier years, from not necessarily year one, but kind of the earlier stuff. And they made a Batman that I think is so the gold standard that all other Batmans now I compare to the Christopher Nolan, Christian Bale Batman, in my opinion. And they had all kinds of source material, and they cherry picked just the things that work well, and they built on it too. I can't imagine somebody looking at Dark Knight and thinking, I don't know. I think I like the Batman in the comic books better. Right. Or I really like nipples on my suit, actually. I think
they're so good. Useful. Yeah. I mean, at least if they were little antennas or something. Come on. And write that into the lore.
So one of the things we're pulling, we didn't mention it beforehand as much, but now once we're looking at some of our favorites, it sounds like one of the things that makes a good adaptation is removing things from the source material and adding things to improve it. Looking at the bad adaptations that we could think of, let's keep that in mind. And I'll go with the Hobbit trilogy. I started with the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh, man.
I think a bad adaptation is the Hobbit trilogy. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but they were so worried about packing in as much content as possible to make 3 movies out of a very short. I mean, it's like not a long book, guys.
I read the book, so that's saying something.
Yeah, you and me both did before the movie came out. And it was originally going to be 2 movies, and they made it 3 movies. And when you're watching that, you're just like, we don't need all this extra stuff. It doesn't make any sense. And I think that they were so adamant about adding things to the source material that they lost a lot of what made the source material super good, which was this kind of fast pace. Each chapter has a beginning and an end to the story. It was really meant to be like read to your kids chapter at a time. And they kind of just decimated that by making this big grand story that felt, like a blob that was kind of just misshapen and moving in one direction. It wasn't really that great. And so I think The Hobbit was a bad trilogy. What do you guys got?
I got a shitty Street Fighter movie back in 2009. And hopefully that's done properly with the last Street Fighter we were talking about earlier.
About last time, yeah.
But yeah, oh my God, acting's horrible. The plot was garbage. Yeah, characters were not even like faithful. It felt like it's just like, what was even the point of this? So this is what pulls people away from wanting to even like spend money on these type of. Yeah, you're ruining it. I'd rather just go back home and play Street Fighter 6 and make my own lore.
It was nothing like the original like game or like that or any of the fun of the game.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, don't want to ever see this shit again.
So it was hard for me trying to find bad adaptations because if it looks bad, I just don't watch it, and that's the case for almost like all of them that people had negative reviews. It's like, well, I can't really talk too much about that. I've never seen it, but I'm gonna list a few anyways. Real quick, I don't think I saw the Assassin's Creed movie from 2016, but I heard that was one of them too. It's like it looks familiar. I remember it had a certain actor.
Michael
I remember.
Fassbender.
Yeah. There we go.
Sure, probably him. Yeah.
Not that I seen it twice or anything, but it's still a shitty movie the second time.
The Giver, I remember reading the book and never watched the movie, and Ender's Game also. I read the book in school and didn't watch the movie, but those were both reviewed as bad.
I will defend the Ender's Game movie as much as I possibly can because that is a hell of a hard story to pitch. And especially once you get to like the sequel books to that. But I will say that at the end of that, they still kind of land the point that it was bad that he was good at killing these bugs. I remember I showed that movie to Daniel, who was like, what is this? I'm like, watch it. It's a good story. And by the end, he walked away with like a changed soul. It was funny.
That sounds like
much it's just like, but he was like, wow, so he was a bad guy. I'm like, the nation was a bad guy, and he is becoming a guy. He ends up like leading them. But yeah, I think it was not bad. But Ender's Game is kind of a tough one, adapt. Actually, it deserves to be adapted into a show, not a movie. Yeah. That way you can really let the characters breathe.
I think we're seeing a lot more success in making a series out of something than just a movie, because a movie is so compact. You have to hurry up and fit it in 2 hours, maybe 3 max, but it doesn't give you the growth and character development stuff that we love seeing now in even a mini series, 8 episodes or 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, but the show that I really want to talk about, I love this show, but fans had a lot of complaints about it because it wasn't close enough to the source material, and that's Halo. We watched and talked about Halo a lot on here, and it's such a good, to me, it looked especially visually so accurate. And I think the biggest thing the fans didn't like is that the story didn't follow what they're expecting from the game. And that, especially with that one character, the girl, that it kind of deviated and followed her more.
Yeah.
Master Chief taking off his helmet so much and stuff. It's like, okay, I understand a lot of their complaints, but it's mostly just not sticking to the game closely enough, I think.
It pulled a lot from the books, and unfortunately, I think that show would have done a lot better if it just wasn't called Halo. It was just something else. Well, not about Halo. Like the show actually, I think had a pretty good production.
If it was a Starship Trooper branch off spinoff.
Yeah, that's another good. Oh God, that's a great adaptation. Actually, now that you're bringing it up, because the book, it really like fixes the book actually, because the book's message is a little bit wonky. Anyways, but yeah, the Halo series. As much as we love Paramount around here, thank you for the sponsorship. The Halo series was a real misstep. Before, like 10 years ago, when you said there's going to be a video game adaptation, that was bad news. It was going to be bad. I think the Mario movie had a lot to do with that. Why are video game adaptations working now? The Last of Us and like the Detective Pikachu movie and stuff like that. Why are they working now? They didn't before.
I think because at least one of them at some point was successful, so they decided they can put money behind it. Because movie adaptations used to be the made-for-TV Sci-Fi Channel garbage, and now they're actually, okay, let's put $50 million or $100 million behind it because it's recognizable and we've seen it pays off before, so it's worth the investment in most cases.
Yeah, and I think one of the big highlights is that they pull people who actually see why the game worked. So for The Last of Us, they have the game creator in the development team for that show. So he obviously knows what it's supposed to be like. And, other things too, I'm not necessarily pulling anything specific, but if we look at the Detective Pikachu one, well, clearly they got a bunch of younger audiences that grew up on Pokemon games to make it. Nobody grew up on Mario that made the Mario movie, because that's impossible. But you could tell that's the case for the Pokemon movie. Like, oh, it's the whimsy, it's the world. The idea that you could be walking and seeing a Cubo out in a field is almost the magic alone. You didn't really need to change too much after that. That was pretty big.
Glad you mentioned Detective Pikachu because it was on my honorable mentions list. Also, Tron is another one I didn't talk about, but
give me a Tron. I love that Tron movie.
Not an adaptation though.
Series, right? Aren't they working on more Tron?
No, they're working on Tron. Ares is coming out this year.
Ares, that's right.
What did you say, Frank?
It's not a series.
No,
Or it's not an
It's
adaptation.
not an adaptation.
What?
Was a
No,
yeah, I guess it's the
so.
same medium. It's just a reboot or a
Kind of
retelling.
like a
of the
number
same-
2, right? In a way?
Yeah, it's a sequel because it's the same actors.
Yeah.
Jeff Bridges comes forward from the old one.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there was a Tron in the 80s.
That's what I mean.
This Tron is based off of. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more of a.
It's a sequel to the 80s one, though.
Yeah.
Tron
Yeah.
Legacy is a sequel to the 80s. And
Yeah.
the Tron Ares, I just wish it wasn't Jared Leto, but because he has
Maybe this will
impressed
be
me
his
since
chance
Dallas
to
Buyers Club.
redefine his
He had a lot
career.
of chances.
I hope so.
I'll start over. Come on.
But I'm just happy to have more Tron back. It's like one of those things where we'll be shouting from the room. I mean, I know Daniel's going to pre-order his ticket, but the idea that they get into our world and then just seeing that like light cycle cut a cop car, I'm like, all right, you got me.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
So yeah, guys, hit up our social medias. Let us know your guys' favorite adaptations or worst adaptations and why you think they're working now and they didn't beforehand. I really like this discussion. We're going to try to do some more of these discussions going forward because I know that they make good YouTube videos and it's just, on a slow news day. It's perfect. We're going to be shifting over to our watch list. Jonathan, why don't you lead the way? What are we watching this March?
All right. So if you guys, I'm still catching up on Daredevil, so don't hate me, but Daredevil Born Again is out. So you guys should be watching that. If you haven't watched previous Daredevil, get caught up with me. Also Survivor's back on. So we're watching Survivor, which is, season 48. It's already such a good show.
Damn, that's crazy. 48.
Movies, though, I just watched a movie called The Gorge on Apple TV, I believe it was. It came out in February, but, it's really good. It's already out now, so you don't have to wait. So if you haven't watched it yet, watch that one. Then we have the Snow White movie is coming out this month. Are you guys going to see that?
I'm going to watch it as a hate watch. I plan on going in and throwing popcorn at that screen.
But I do plan. I'm gonna go watch another movie, but I do plan on buying the popcorn buckets for it because they're pretty badass.
So I figured I have to watch it because Susie wants to see it and she doesn't want to see a lot of movies. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it's not at least complete garbage. It will be a different taste. It'll be.
Well, you're
unique.
coming back to do the review on that, man. I can't wait to hear what your take is on that.
Like, this shit was complete garbage.
Yeah.
I also really want to watch Mickey 17. I think it just came out.
I want to see that too. Yeah.
Yesterday or something like that. Novocaine looks good. I probably won't see it in theaters though, but that does look good. So if you guys have time, check it out.
That's a streaming one for me too. I can't wait to see that though, because Jack Quaid, I am such a Jack Quaid fan now.
Right, from The Boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Lower Decks
And
too.
then-
Yeah, sorry.
Another Jason Statham movie. If you guys love his movies, they're all very similar, but you can't get enough of them. It's called A Working Man.
What's the plot? Can you explain
check it
now?
out.
He gets gun
He's
and
this
kills people?
he's a badass undercover trying to play a regular guy, leaving that world behind, and then he realized there's corruption and people being abused, and he's like, you know what, I got to step up and protect the abused. So he goes around and cracking skulls and
Sounds like
bringing
Jason
justice.
Statham movie.
Right, it's pretty much all of them.
By the way, I just told Jonathan this at the gym, but they're making Beekeeper too. So if you guys are Beekeeper fans,
That was a good one, too.
they're continuing that story. That's cool.
I'm gonna have to start a DVD collection of just all those Jason Statham movies. I need shelves that have.
You could just throw them in. Yeah, they're definitely worth watching while you check on Instagram or something like that. They're always somewhat decent.
Yeah.
Anything else on the list, Jonathan?
That's it. There's not a lot of great movies coming out right now, but in the near future we got a lot in the pipeline.
Mickey 17 is definitely on my list.
Yeah,
that looks so
great.
good.
Yeah, that looks good.
I got a couple shows I got to add to your list, Jonathan. First off, this Sunday, and it's an event for me, is Righteous Gemstones, the final season.
What?
Oh yeah.
I thought
Doesn't
it was
miss.
already done.
Nope, we got one more season. And it starts
It-
tomorrow
it-
night for you and me.
No way! This is
Yeah.
news to me. I didn't know this was coming out. I thought
Uncle Baby Bobby Billy's back, baby.
I thought it ended perfect, or that's crazy.
I know
to me.
it had a very good kind of like, oh, they're all watching the monster truck together. They're a family. There's one more season. The dad's retired. They're getting him out of retirement. Yeah, dude. You gotta watch the trailer.
And this is tomorrow.
I know. Tomorrow night.
Oh
I know.
my gosh!
I'm already like, what am I gonna make for dinner? The dog's outside. I don't want them to interrupt me.
What?
I know,
heck?
dude.
That's crazy.
It's one of those things where like you, me, and Daniel will text each other random memes or whatever the hell from. And it's
That's
just
so
such a
funny.
perfect show.
Oh my goodness! What the heck? Okay,
Truly excited. I'll watch anything Danny McBride makes. I love the dude.
that's so funny.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And then also, I know that I've kind of fallen off of it, but I do need to keep up with it. Is the Wheel of Time is starting again? Season 3, March 13th. Are you guys watching Wheel of Time at all?
No, I haven't seen any of it.
Stunned silence. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate. And then this show I'm kind of interested. I haven't seen it yet. It came out on the 6th. Is Deli Boys, and It's these two Pakistani Americans who inherit their father's, I think it's convenience store. Deli. Sorry, it's Deli Boys. Duh, Deli. I'm reading the thing right now. And they find out that he was actually like a crime boss and or involved in a crime family. And now that he died, they have to continue his job because otherwise there's a missing part of that crime family. And so these two kids that are like, oh, great, we have to make deli sandwiches now, and find out they're actually in the middle of a big crime syndicate and have to try to keep up the ruse. It looks so funny. And I like how it's kind of the dark humor thing like that. But yeah.
Interesting.
And which one's that on? What's that one on? What's that one on?
Hulu.
The Deli Boys? Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Oh, by the way, I made an interesting connection watching Daredevil the other day. Foggy Nelson and Oz Cobb are brothers from the Penguin. They have the same mom.
You think so?
The same mom actress.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I was going to say, hold on. I want to hear this.
So Daredevil Season 2, I saw her come on screen. I was like, wait a minute. She plays, Oz's mom on the new Penguin series. It's like, oh man, that's a whole, cross-dimensional connection. But
that's funny.
I like it.
I would love to see Oz and Fisk in the same room. That Kingpin Penguin discussion.
Imagine them being two powers, different parts of the city, but then they were starting to rival with each other because of bumping borders or something like that.
Yeah, go to war. Oh my God. That's the Marvel DC crossover I want right there.
Yeah, that'd be so much better than heroes versus heroes. Put the villains versus villains.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Imagine like a period where MCU or DC or both get to the point that like the heroes actually all got killed off. So it's like a rebirth. The cities are all being taken over by villains as they rise in power. And then, we need the Punishers or the ground level heroes to start to elevate or surface, come to light.
A really fun. It doesn't end very well, but the beginning is the Injustice. It was a video game and then it made it a comic book and then a movie. But the start of that is that Joker comes to Metropolis, which Batman's like, why are you doing that? So he goes and checks it out. And what he's doing is he kills Scarecrow, takes the fear toxin, gets he kidnaps Lois Lane. Superman comes in to save Lois Lane. Boom. Basically, all his fear toxin gets into his system. Then he sees Lois Lane as Doomsday. And he doesn't know what he's doing. So he takes Doomsday and he flies him into space to go kill him. And Batman's like, stop. That's Lois Lane. And he kills Lois Lane, who just found out she was pregnant with Superman's baby. So he kills him. And so the whole story is like,
how do you Superman break a hero?
Yeah. So Superman's like, I can't trust humanity to protect himself anymore. And becomes like the king of humanity. And Batman and his like ragtag team were trying to stop him. It's such a good beginning. Doesn't end super great, but that beginning is so freaking awesome.
Yeah, where's that movie? Come on,
It is a movie. It's animated though. You can't see it.
I don't watch the animated as much
but
anymore.
DC animated movies are phenomenal. So
they're always good. They're not very long. Oh, by the way, speaking of this month, next week, and we'll have a review on the Geek Freaks podcast, of course. No, why am I plugging Geek Freaks podcast? You guys listening to it? We're going to be discussing Invincible, the season's ending. And I think that's just like, how do they not miss? It's good every single time.
Yeah.
So if you guys aren't watching that yet, it's always worth the watch. And the finale's next week. All right, let's shift over to our interview with Rob and Analese from the Nerd Best Friends. Today I'm joined by Analese and Rob from the Nerd Best Friend podcast. How are you guys both doing today?
I'm great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Frank.
Awesome. All right, so let's start with you, Analese. Can you break down a little bit of what this podcast is all about?
Sure. The short version is that Rob and I have been best friends for a very long time, for over 30 years. We met in high school. And somewhere along the lines, we were like, let's do a podcast. And Rob's actually done a couple of podcasts in the past, many, many years ago. And we couldn't quite land on what to do. So we thought, well, we're both nerds. We're best friends. And we like to talk about like very nerdy things all the time. And it's just one of the things that's hinged our friendship is that we play games, we play video games, we hung out and are nerds about stuff and love sharing that with each other. And so the whole premise of our podcast is that you can be nerdy about everything and anything. And we're going to have these conversations that either you wish you could have or you're already having. So that's kind of the premise of our podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of our tagline is the nerdy conversations you're already having or wish you could, because we always thought, we have professional lives and we've done, we're in education, we're in technology, we're in management, we do all these things. But really when we think about like, oh, what would be like our dream job or our dream scenario, be like, oh, we'd own that comic book game store, cafe, bar, and we'd hang out all the time, talking nerds, having conversations about the new game, the new comic book, the new movie that's coming out and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, we're probably not like, that's not the trajectory we went on. So what if we did that virtually, right? Thanks to the internet, we could still just hang out and have those conversations, meet new nerds, meet new people that have those same kind of interests and have those interesting conversations. And so that's it. The idea is you're walking into our, virtual space where you can nerd out about anything.
So Rob just stole my teenage journal where I was talking about my nerd cafe, and it's troubling.
We all want it, right? Does yours also talk about like the lazy like shop dog lying by the door that kind of like lifts its head for everybody?
100%.
Yeah. Named Crypto, of course. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
All right. We're on the same page.
So Rob, you actually had podcasts before this. Can you kind of touch on what those were and let's transition into a new show?
Sure. I mean, this was back
about 20 years
early
ago.
2000s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, probably about 20 years
Internet
ago.
radio days when it wasn't even considered podcast at the time yet. Yeah.
Or it was early podcast, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to like download an RSS feed link kind of thing. But my brother and I were very into racing, race cars and NASCAR and stuff like that, because that was the era. It was more popular than ever back in 2000 with, Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt and all that kind of stuff. And we're like, we get together on these Sundays and we, drink beer and watch these races and sit here and talk about it. Let's start recording a podcast. And so we recorded that podcast, the two of us. It was called the Track Smack Podcast because we were talking smack about NASCAR. It was just an excuse really to hang out with my brother-in-law every week and talk about racing kind of thing. And that kind of went nowhere. And then he had kids and he's like, I can't do this editing anymore. And then because I had a little bit of experience with that, I actually did a podcast for the school district that I work for. And so myself and a colleague, we set up a podcast for the school district all about educational technology, new releases, the idea being like, hey, it's really tough to get professional development to all these teachers. We have all these different places for the community to learn about what's going on in our school district. Let's try a podcast. And so we did that. And for a couple of seasons before COVID hit, and then being in educational technology, when school shut down and everything had to go digital, we were very busy. And, and that project also ended up dying. But for sure, the Nerd Best Friends podcast has been the most consistent and the longest lasting, and something that we're actually building an audience, right? And we're having those. I mean, we're here today because we're making connections with other nerds and other fields. Everyone that we've met and gotten feedback from has been super cool and super nice. The idea of, the nerd getting bullied like it was when we were kids and where we kind of needed a safe space to talk about this stuff. Everybody's got that safe space now. Everybody's talking about this stuff. It seems like, everybody we come into contact, like you, Frank, has just been super inviting and really cool.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we like about Geek Freaks as well is we always harken back to, early 2000s when Phantom Menace came out, and all we heard about was like, oh, this is a terrible movie. It's terrible, blah, blah, blah. But for us kids that were our first Star Wars, we were like, I don't know. I thought that was pretty awesome. And then when you grow up, you're like, wait a minute, we all thought it was awesome. We just weren't talking to each other. And so it's nice that now we're not hiding in the band rooms anymore. We can talk to each other about the stuff that we actually do think is cool. And it's nice that like your guys'
Okay, wait.
Yeah, I was going to interrupt as well.
What instrument did you play?
I was definitely playing Pokemon cards, but I was in the band room, kids. Yeah, I knew where the real cool kids were.
Got it. You were one of the hanger outers.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're a couple of trumpet players.
There we go.
And a couple of drum majors. And that's true. That's where you eat your lunch, you hang out, and that's where we were playing Magic the Gathering. That's where we were. That's where I learned how to play poker.
Yeah.
That's all that stuff.
Oh God. Yeah. If you did my senior year, if you did it right, you played poker like in multiple classes with your same friends. And then eventually by lunchtime, you were finishing up the poker game for the day. And it was like, that's how you plan a senior year and stuff like that. It's great. Okay, so with your guys' show, you guys founded it in 2021, and I gotta say, I listen to a lot of different podcasts, especially part of the network. You guys have such a well-produced show. With that practice, that's why I was like, oh, okay, Rob's had a podcast in the past. That makes a little sense. You guys got really great transitional music and audio quality. What goes into producing your guys' episode every week?
Before you say anything, Analese, this is great, because when we had the conversations about the podcast, and when we talked about it, I was a no. I'm like, I've done podcasts before. It's a lot of work. There's so much editing. I don't want to do it, Analese. So you made the assumption, which made logical sense. I don't do any of it. Analese does all of the production and post work and editing, and I agree, it's amazing.
Yeah. Sorry, you both are very kind. I mean, I listen to podcasts that my hope is that we're putting out a product that represents who we are. And we are both educators. Right? I'm a high school principal. Rob is district level, chief technology officer. We're both management educators now. Yeah. That whatever we put out should represent us professionally, even though this is not about our professional work. So that's the standard. I pushed this podcast on Rob. I really wanted to do a Buffy podcast. I am a huge fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I was 18 the year Buffy was released. I was in college, and it spoke to me in a way that no other show had spoken to me before. It means a lot to me personally. We were going to do a show about that, but Rob brought up some good points. Like, what do you do once that show's over? Yeah, you could do things that are tangential to it, but at some point it will just naturally have an end. And if we're going to do this, we're going to do this in a way that we can build an audience and just keep doing it as long as we enjoy doing it. And so I learned everything on the fly, how to edit, what tools to use. I did go buy a nice microphone just to make sure that our audio quality was good. But I have found a little bit of a creative output in the editing, and have gotten to a point where it's my once a week, it's my Sunday activity. Spend some time with the family, make breakfast. We either record or I am editing. So we alternate, which is also why we're not as timely as we would like, because we record ahead of time. We give ourselves a buffer so I have time to edit. But yeah, it means a lot to me to produce something or to have something out there with my name, our names, and our voices. Yeah. That also just it stands for the high quality that we both learned, right? We met in that band room. And if one or either of us had decided not to do marching band, we probably would not have become best friends. And so we learned that excellence from our band director at the time, that I think both of us continue to apply those types of excellence lessons in everything we do. You don't get into management without wanting to strive for that excellence. So our podcast should reflect that. So I appreciate the compliments, but it's really just about representing us, who we are, and the fact that being a nerd is okay and it's important. And we still don't like to see kids being bullied because they are nerds about Pokemon, or the students at my high school are flabbergasted that I could walk up to them and talk to them about fantasy football, or I could walk up to a group of 9th grade boys who are playing Magic and actually know the things. So embracing all that are in all kids, embracing all of them is a huge part of also just we're nerds and it's okay. We like being nerds. It's awesome being nerds. And that's important to me.
I tell people when I'm introducing the podcast, I always say, like, just start with the most recent episode and go backwards, because I know how good it sounds now. It always sounded good, but if you love it now, you'll stick with it when maybe it was a little rough back in season 1. So just listen backwards so you can jump around with that. But yeah, does an amazing job with our podcast. I even remember calling her one day around the end of season 2. I was listening to the podcast in the car along my list, because it was a long drive. So a lot of podcasts played and ours was kind of in the middle of it. And I called her, I said, you know what? I think our podcast is good. Like, I was listening to these other ones and I'm like, ours was better than some of them. We're doing something here. Good job.
Genuine surprise there by him. We're actually okay.
You guys, it's a great show and it's very conversational. And you're bringing up a great point with you guys being educators. I'm wondering, have you guys seen a difference between how people celebrate fandom from when you guys were kids to nowadays seeing kids being geeks and nerds alike?
Oh, 100%. I mean, my school has a D&D club and a club for just about anything you can imagine, right? And I can't imagine. I tried to be in chess club when we were in high school, and I was one of one who wanted to be in chess club, but now it's a thing, right? It's much more embraced. And when I talk about the podcast with people, I tell them like, you can be a nerd about anything. If you love Dr. Pepper or you love Pepsi, you could go on to social media and find a fan group of that thing and just nerd out with those people. And that's what's behind our show. And I love seeing it from kids. I have students from my school that listen to our podcast because they're also nerds and they love it. So yeah.
I would say the biggest difference with that from when I was a kid is like Analese said, it's the internet. When we were kids, it was like it's kind of the same. Who were the influencers then, right? Who was the cool nerd that brought Magic the Gathering to the band room the first time? Who was the cool nerd that told me, oh, I'm reading this new Transformers comic and it's really different than the cartoon and you're going to love it. It was more word of mouth, right? So we had to have that, or going to the store and just figuring out like, oh, they put something new on the end cap. I guess, like I'll try that out. There wasn't this idea of like, oh, I'm thinking of something. I have a computer in my pocket. I'll just pull it out. And all of a sudden there's a wiki page, there's a fan group, there's a podcast, there's 13,000 YouTube channels about it, all of that kind of thing. So you can really get so much more information now, which makes it difficult in some ways because we can't spread our time everywhere. But also there's, like Analese said, there's always a group for you in whatever it is that you find is cool. You can find another group of people because of where we are with the internet now.
Well, it's nice to hear kind of a positive effect of the internet on the kids, because I think a lot of us, always hear the doom scrolling, the bad news side of it. So is the internet helping in creating communities for kids where they can find a home? Is that more of a positive than we're seeing out of the negatives?
I mean,
I think about this a lot.
Right. We're only going to hear about the negative effects. And there are some. I do think one of the most important lessons we can teach adolescents is how the algorithms work. You click on something and then you're going to get fed just that voice, and it's an echo chamber because they're trying to feed you the things you want and then sell you things that they think you need. They being the operative term there. But if teenagers are allowed the time to understand that, then the impact of it is not as great as we would think. And technology is going to be a battle forever in education, but the ability to connect, I think, is important. We're almost, I think, if I may, Rob, he has described it at times of like when we were in high school, it's almost parallel to coming out, right? You come out as a D&D nerd and you're careful to make sure, is this person safe for me to let them know and ask them if they play D&D, and that stigma is gone. So it's a yes and. There's still the not so great sides of social media and how it feeds algorithms. And Rob may have a different answer of experience there.
Yeah. When I get this question and get it a lot, because sometimes I have to defend internet in front of students and things, really what it comes down to is we have been poor stewards of the internet, specifically Web 2.0 with social media and things. We as parents, as educators, as adults, we got that effect too. Social media and the internet does such a good job with dopamine and modeling it after casino machines and things. Like, we're constantly scrolling too. We're constantly in front of that screen too. And we know that, children look at adults and emulate them. And we also didn't understand, because of the rapid nature of technology growth, that, hey, all of a sudden we're looking around and seeing like we're spending a real long time on these screens. And I think we did before. There were definitely kids that would go home and just plop themselves down in front of the TV after school from, 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 9 o'clock at night and kind of zombie out. And there was, concern about that even when I was a kid, of like, how much time are you sitting in front of the TV? And now that TV is with us always during the school day, the work day, after work, middle of the night, it's always there. So like I said, educating, understanding how these things work, right? If you're getting entertainment for free, like, guess what? Like, you're the product and those kinds of things. So educating and being aware of it, but on the positive side, and I'm definitely an internet optimist. I think the internet is the most incredible achievement of mankind since the first campfire. You have a community, right? Anecdotally, as an example, when schools shut down and things, were all, tight during the COVID pandemic, my son was okay because he had a group of friends that would all jump on Discord and play video games together.
Right.
And I would overhear them in the living room. They weren't just talking about the video game. They were talking about life. They were talking about what was going on. They were talking about different friends. They were having the normal conversations. It's just that they couldn't be in the same room. So the internet gave them a tool where they could still be kids. Same thing with us, like nerd wise. I'm a huge D&D player. I've run D&D games since I was in high school. It's a huge hobby for me. And it's one of those hobbies where if I play D&D every week, it's like, yeah, it's a Dungeons and Dragons game. But really what it was a dinner with a group of friends and conversations we would have in and around the game. It was connection and community that I was building that not a lot of adults have, right? And it's like, yeah, we framed it around this nerdy thing. But really, it turns out I was a pretty healthy and well-adjusted adult because I would spend time every week with friends. And then when that shut down, I started getting all these requests. Can we start an online game? Can we start an online game? Can we play D&D? I hear people are doing it on Zoom or they're doing it on Discord or there's these digital tools now. And so we said, oh, okay, sure. And we started this game with like 8 people in it and we played it every week and for years. And it was a very special time, and it was made possible because we had the internet tools, we had the community, available to us, and it became a really special time to the point where, and this would be an episode to check out, we played a campaign of Dungeons and Dragons from 1st to 20th level. We played almost every week for 4 years to get there. Yeah. And our final adventure, where we fought the big boss and did the whole thing, we also decided let's do it in person. And so from all over California and different parts of the country, everybody, we came to Vegas and we rented event space and we played that game there. And it was the first time we had all been in the same room, in the same place. It was the first time some people had ever met that each person in person. And there were tears and it just felt so special and all this stuff. And so when I talk about the internet is great, those are the moments that I'm grabbing as far as like, no, this is really a powerful tool that connects people as much as it can isolate people as well.
That was Rob and Analese from the Nerd Best Friend podcast. It's just part of the interview. The full interview is on the Geek Freaks interview feed. It's a much longer interview, and we're going to be talking more about diving into geek culture, what it's like starting a podcast, and being educated at the same time. And it's just such a really good conversation. We've talked more about D&D, so go ahead and check that out. Links are going to be in the description for everything, including Rob and Analese's podcast and Geek Freaks interviews. Let's go ahead and get back to Squeaks and Jonathan. Let's move to network news. Again, I want to give you a reminder, we have a brand new show in the network called Anime Plus. If you guys want to join their Discord, I can't suggest it enough. It's a really active group discussing anime. These two guys are amazing. Array and Own, they're blessed. And we've been working together on getting them to some conventions. So if you guys are in the Boston or the New Jersey area, you guys want to go to anime conventions, you'll have a chance to meet Anime Plus there. And then for Outlast Podcast, it's season 12. We're in the middle of it right now. We just picked our favorites. We want to hear from you guys. Who are your favorites this season? We'll track them along the way and see how they do. Over Challenge Accepted, we're doing Game Changer from the Dropout Studios, and we're covering Daredevil every week. For Fandom Portals, Aaron and Brasher just did 500 Days of Summer, a movie I haven't seen before, but it's got JGL, so I do need to watch that. And they had a really good discussion about like love and pursuit, stuff like that. Interesting. And I want to give a reminder, Headlines is back. We canceled it, but we brought it back because Lore Master's canceled. I can't do the Lore Master. It's just too damn boring. But Headlines is back. It's done every single day. And you guys could subscribe on any of your favorite podcast platforms and on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Let's get to our recommendations. What are your recommendations for the week? Jonathan, let's start with you.
Noise. So we got next month, because I was talking about movies and stuff we got coming out this month, but next month we're going to have The Last of Us. So definitely you want to rewatch season 1. Season 2 is coming out in April. So watch that. And or season 2 comes out next month.
Yes.
Or starts up next month. So both those I will be trying once I get caught up with Daredevil. I'm going to try to watch both those before the next season starts. So I definitely recommend that too.
That's a good one. What do you got, Squeaks?
Yeah, so you've seen this from last month, and I've actually spent some time now in it. But Yakuza Pirate in Hawaii, right? It's such a weird, fun game, and I was talking to you before this podcast about it. But yeah, it's just your typical Yakuza game, especially it has the same fighting style as Yakuza, the crazy-ass title, The Dead Man with No Name or something like that. But yeah, it's funny at times, but it's essentially this combination of old school pirate theme in modern day Hawaii. And your crew is a mixture of both. And it's just wacky. It's fun. So far, very interesting story. I spent quite a few hours in it now. So yeah, I could highly recommend.
Yeah. That's a good one. For me, we have the Minecraft movie coming up, which I think looks pretty abysmal, but I do want to give it a shot. And so I have 2 recommendations for you. First off, there's a show called Minecraft Story Mode, I believe it was called. And it's actually shot like within Minecraft, essentially. So it kind of like flushes out some of the lore in Minecraft, some of the world building. The other thing I want to suggest to you guys is the newer Jumanji movies, because I think that's the vibe they're going for with this new Minecraft movie. And those are so fun. They're a nice little romp. Of course, the classic Jumanji movie is the best, but these ones, you have just The Rock doing Rock things, you have Kevin Hart doing Kevin Hart things. But I would say the performance of Jack Black, who is going to be playing Steve in the Minecraft movie, is where it shines. He's so fun in that movie, and he does a hell of a good job. And it was a return to him being a side character, which I think was where Jack Black does his best work, not when he's the main character. And yeah, all around a great movie. So just to kind of get you guys primed up for the Minecraft movie coming up that we hope is decent and not abysmal. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. I'm not looking forward to it, but we'll see. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us this week, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.